nicely by the Big Water Film Festival board to come and moderate a conversation with these two lovely people. We have Dawn Nicholson, who's in the film we saw last night, Risking Life, and Pierre Gaffié. No, I didn't do it. You did it.
Gaffié.
Gaffié.
I have problems since my childhood. So it's good.
Thank you. Last night we saw his film Radio Moon, and he has another film in the festival called Constance, A Symphony of Kisses. Was anybody able to see their films? All right, cool, great. So you're familiar, so we'll have a great time today. So I'm just going to start by asking, we don't know you very well, and Dawn, we'll start with you, but just tell us how you got involved in filmmaking.
Sure. So I'm trying to figure out how far to truncate or abridge this story, because filmmaking was not something I grew up wanting to do. I didn't realize, honestly, that it was a thing. I mean, you know, something of an addiction. I will say that the way I pay the bills is I make documentary style work for nonprofits, NGOs, globally and in Minneapolis. And then I also produce for Twin Cities PBS as a freelancer. So I'm actually, when I go home, I'm going to start a project on the history of the Ramsey Hill area in St. Paul. So it's like, stories are always different depending on what the clients want or what I'm interested in. So anyway, that's...
I'll film all the time.
I'll film all the time,
or
at least documentary all the time.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great, and Pierre, how did you get started in filmmaking?
To impress a girl.
Yes.
Right? How'd that go? Never mind.
How did it go?
Did it work?
How's that working? Yes.
Now, I was about to graduate. I was 16 years old, and I was really in love with a young girl. And at a crossroads in south of France, in a big city, she didn't pay attention to me. So she said, "What are you gonna do after bachelor? After you graduate?" And I said, I had 2 seconds to make a decision. And I said, I will become a filmmaker.
Good.
Then what happened? How'd that go? How did, so...
No, so that's true. But I have to rise up to my promise. And so when I went to the university, I was really caught in indecision about what to do. So I rolled a dice with 1 for psychology, 2 for philosophy, 3 for sociology, 4 for really, I'm an indecisive person, as the character in Radio Moon. So I rolled the dice really on the day before the inscription at the university, and it was 3 for philosophy. So really away from cinema. And the day after, when I went to pay the fees for the inscription for the university, I went on the campus, and I noticed, really surprisingly, that there was 2 cinema courses during the philosophy 5 years studies. So I was happy. The lessons were very boring. Rest in peace, my old teacher. But I started to become more and more interested in films, of course. As many people, I think, here, one day I saw a film, a French film that you don't know, that puzzled me a lot, so to become a filmmaker. Then I began dating the young girl.
Good.
Yeah. And more and more I started making video clip for musical bands in Toulouse, south of France, with little camera or even still photography, and mix them all together. And one day, as far as I remember, I was in a sports center, and there was a TV journalist there at the same time, and he asked me, "What are you doing? Are you a student?" "Yes, I am a student. I'm running a TV program. If you like films, if you are interested in entertainment, you can join us in September to talk about films." So I was surprised. I was very shy in front of the camera for the rehearsals. I thought they will never take me because I'm too young. But they chose me. So I had to talk about film live on air for 2 years. Then I went to Paris, and for 4 years I made the same thing but on the biggest TV show on Canal+, which is a famous French television. And after 4 years of reviewing films in this program, I get really bored. I had something was not going on. I thought I can do better than that. The pay was good, but I think you cannot go on forever saying that the last Sylvester Stallone is not as good as the previous one.
Hold on.
Nice.
So I was 26 or 27, so I went to the boss of I said, "I must stop, I have to stop." And he said, "You're making a stupid decision." So I wrote a script that was, sorry if I'm too long maybe?
No, 2 days.
Okay.
Alright.
I'm certain they all want to know about my girlfriend.
Are you still together? Oh, I'm sorry. It was probably for the best.
Yes. So I said to the boss, "I want to stop." He said, "It's a wrong decision." I wrote a script, very strange, about, it was a really surrealistic movie, like David Lynch, and but it was the crossroads. I think I had to make a real decision between trying to be a journalist and trying to direct. The outcome was not as good as I expected. The film has been shown in around 9 or 10 festivals, screened on television in Belgium. But I was mixed. I had mixed feeling. I was considering that I had made a mistake, maybe. So I became a producer for 4 years. I stopped directing to produce films of other people who had asked me. And after that pause, I started over and directed again. So, and then we broke up. But at the same time, I had one of my other films, Dolphin Skin City, a film about architecture with longer, probably more ambitious, was screened in the south of France. So I was hesitating. Really, I was hesitating, and so I went to present the Dolphin Skin City, and I'm so happy to have a second chance and finally meet you.
Well,
Is Sylvester Stallone here?
what's that?
Sylvester Stallone is here?
Yeah, that's part of the second half.
I loved his last movie.
So one thing I've done before, and I hope I don't put you two on the spot, but you both saw each other's film last night. So Dawn, I mean, could you talk a little bit about Pierre's film? Or, I conversation, and I mean, so I hope I'm not putting you on the spot, but you saw it, and tell us a little bit about it. Was there a moment that stuck out to you, or something you'd like to ask him about something he did?
The moment that stuck out, I have to say it was the camera use, which we talked about in the Q&A yesterday. So there was a lot of really tight framing and intimate framing of the main character. And also the sound was, I mean, I would imagine, were you using the sound from the radio's mics? Because it was so sensitive.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
With the sound engineer, we wondered about how to give the sound to the listeners. We hesitated between a very comfortable sound in the speakers of Sibyl, the radio host, but we decided no, it was better to have a sound sounding live, more live maybe. So. A few years ago, I came upon an interview by the rock band Radiohead. You noticed them? And they were looking for their sound because they were not selling as much records as they wanted. And the sound engineer one morning came with a mic, which is usually used for concerts, for open air. Okay. And the Radiohead, the band said, no, this is not a good mic. And the sound engineer, the mixer said, you should try this mic. And they accept it, and that became the sound of Radiohead. So I like the fact I like accidents sometimes.
Yeah.
When you're trying something. So I don't know if I'm answering to your question properly, but sometimes I feel that the sound could have been better, but it was really. I really wanted to show how this woman is coping with the listener, and more she's suffocating. So, okay.
Yeah.
Well, it had an intimate quality to it. You know, it's like when I was watching it, I was thinking that she's using the voice that you generally use when you're talking to somebody very close, very intense. And you do that when you're in radio. I mean, like that is a voice that comes out in radio, but it was just really present. You know, there's so many other ways that could have been shot and not have created that very accurate feeling of what it is to be in a radio studio and talking very intensely. You know what I'm saying? So I thought that was beautiful.
And you could see her mouth like right on the microphone sometimes too. And
Yeah.
so it was like it was intimate, but then you would have to remember like that is going out throughout the whole city.
Right.
You know, so
one of my ideas, not consciously maybe, but was to film that like in a prison. When you are visiting someone in prison and there is that glass in between, so there are shots on the actress just on her mouth, just on her eyes. I didn't want to make this radio program too glamorous, she's a little star, she's handling everything good. And when I was a student, when I saw On Air written in American films, I was thinking about air like in the mountains. I think on air means I need air. So then I realized it meant live on television. But I think that it could be a metaphor too. Everybody needs air during that conversation. That guy who is about maybe to commit suicide is looking for compassion and civility because she has left her partner.
and Pierre, you saw Risking Light last night.
Yes.
Any moment that stuck out for you, or questions about technique or thoughts?
I was wondering why you kept the close-ups on the characters always in the same frame, yeah, in the same ratio, and I thought maybe it was to put them in some kind of eternity, like you take a photo of themselves for forever. For the first 10 minutes I was thinking, oh, I would like the camera on, I don't remember the first name of the mother. Mary. Or I would like to see Mary in another frame, and then I realized that you probably did that for that her face would be forever in our minds.
Sort of. So we shot the interviews of each of the subjects on this black backdrop looking into camera, and that was the one consistent thing that we had through each of the countries. We had different cinematographers for each country, primarily budget reasons. We used a device called an iDirect so that we could do the interviews with them looking into camera, and they saw my face reflected in the lens. So it avoids that whole piece of somebody having to talk into a camera and being like, looking at a camera. So when they're speaking to camera, they're speaking to me. But I wanted that space, those interviews, to be about the past and your inner life and the inner world, so that they have their life as it is today, and everything that is in the interview is primarily past. With this, so it's present and past juxtaposition, and the idea that the past is always present in your life. No matter where you are in the world, you are impacted by those stories in the black backdrop. So that was where my head was on that. In terms of the framing of them, we actually had 2 cameras in all of the interviews except Mary and O'Shea, and so we had a side camera, which was actually a better camera, but we pulled it out so that we would have just consistent facing the camera shots. But yeah, framing it, it was interesting actually, because some of that had to do with who the cinematographer was and how much I got them up to speed on what we'd done before. You'll note that if you watch it again for some reason, that Mary and O'Shea are cropped tighter more often. And it's because the cinematographer, that was his aesthetic. And that's actually my preferred aesthetic, but I didn't convey it properly to the other cinematographers. So some of it is intentional, and some of it's like, well, here we go, that's what we got. Which is probably the nature of documentary in a nutshell.
If I may, I had another question, because I read about a film called Brokeback Mountain. It's an American film, but directed by an Asian director, Ang Lee, and he said that in Asia, when you here we are reading from left to right, we are clockwise this way, and in Asia they are clockwise the other way. So on the shooting they had problems with the editing. When the director asked Jake Gyllenhaal or Heath Ledger, you can turn the water. He was turning in the American way, and yeah, that's really interesting. So in the editing room, they had problems to make it working. So
wow.
Yeah, so I wonder for the part with in Asia, if your cinematographer had problems with the way you wanted the walks to be made, the eye looking in any direction, or.
We actually ended up using an American cinematographer, so,
Okay, forget.
And Pierre, what do you like to do? Do you have a typical group of people that you work with? Who do you make these films with? Who's on your crew, and how do you go about it?
I think it was the first time ever that I worked with the crew. I don't know, how many films are you shooting a year?
Well, I mean, simultaneously, this one took me 8 years.
Yeah,
So,
but you are on different projects.
yeah, so I'm currently on 4. 2 of them are films and then a bunch of client stuff.
Yeah, because I think the difference between fiction and documentary is that when you film a fiction, you have to write it. And of course, you write 4 or 5 scripts and you just retain one of them at its time. So I probably, my camera is rolling less often than yours.
Mm-hmm.
So in between films, we can lose connection with sound engineers, makeup artists. So for me, it's always a reset. Okay, I have to find sound engineers, cinematographer whom works I like, but who are free. Okay, so for Radio Moon, I knew nobody. I knew nobody. 2 months before the shooting, I was still looking for a cinematographer, and a good friend of mine whose work I admire a lot was working in Africa. But he told me you should meet Sophie Cadet, the cinematographer. So it was strange because she's a woman, and it's always interesting when you have a woman filming another woman, especially when the woman in question is on every frame. But yeah, as I said, it's always something new. I've met another film since, still on the editing room, and I think on 15%, only 3 have worked on radio. Okay.
And so what made it different, like using the woman cinematographer and the actress? Like what do you mean? What's the...
It's a touchy subject. Really.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
Yeah. I know you have a reputation. No. A few years ago in France there was a long feature film who had a lot of success about monks in Algeria, French monks who had been beheaded by terrorists. And the film was called Men and Gods. Maybe it had a distribution in the US. And I noticed that the cinematographer was a woman. And it occurred to me that to film for 3 months monks who are not supposed to have a sexual life and who are strict, having a woman, it prevents you to have a sense of male camaraderie. Yes. So I think the success of the film I mentioned visually could have been a lot thanks to this woman. Sorry for my English. So I think it's a subject, and it's not the same when you work with a man or a woman behind the camera. But I can get along with men perfectly, and sometimes you can have powerful relationships with a woman. So, of course, it's not a science, but I didn't look for working with a female cinematographer, but it happens like that, and I think that in some close-ups, and in some atmosphere of the film, you can feel it. You can feel it. Mm-hmm.
Michel, vous connaissez Jim Harrison?
Non.
C'est un auteur américain. Il s'est beaucoup intéressé au destin, à la vérité intérieure. Il a notamment écrit le roman d'Alva.
Talk a little bit about using that technique. I think it's kind of new, and do you like it? And would you use it again? And
I was really impressed by the movie Into the Wild by Champagne.
Yeah.
And the guy was leaving his family to run through the mountains. And in the films, he's reading a lot, and the screen was streaked with letters from the books. And it probably had an influence on me. And to be honest, at 3 a.m. in the morning during the shooting, I had prepared an English version of the telephone text, but we didn't have the time to make it. And the phone was not working. And my assistant had forgotten to write the text that Sibyl is sending in English. So we had to do it on post-production.
So with the French version, did you have just the camera in the screen and no text on the screen?
In the French version, we have camera in the phone, but it's not sufficient. We had to, because for reading concerns, we have to write it again at the top of the screen.
That's cool.
So I wanted the film to be silent for at least 5 minutes at the beginning, because after that you will have a 10 minutes or 8 minutes conversation between two people, and I wanted the viewers to enter in the film in a really quiet and modest way, with just a few words between the cabman, the cabwoman, the cab driver and Sibyl. So I like films when the atmosphere is growing in a slow pace. It's not a coincidence if the film opens with somebody in bed who is awaiting. And I think I've directed 7 films, and I've just noticed that on the 7th film, 5 are characters that... Yeah. You should write a thesis about it.
you know what I'm doing next week.
She will see the moon, but you will not see her walking. Then after she's in the cab, then on the radio, and in the end she goes on that rooftop, and suddenly she's free. So I felt that, sorry, yeah, we had 10 minutes to film that.
Oh my God.
Really? Because between when we were scouting locations in Paris, in 10 days, the place of the moon in the sky had changed. So the house where it was supposed to be shot, the moon had changed its position. We have sued the moon. She has a good attorney. So this lamp, that's not important, but this lamp is following me from film to film.
I think that statue does too.
Sorry?
I think maybe the statue shows up again in a different...
That one, the white one?
Yeah. And she's reading one of my favorite books. I wanted to show a cab driver who's reflecting in her thoughts too, maybe because of the moon. And by the way, I like the music in the film. It has been made by a French DJ who is 45 years old, so he's trying to get a little bored with scratches and what makes it make his money. Now he's working on more atmospheric soundtracks. What can I say? Maybe we can go inside the studio 3 or 4 minutes later. I hadn't prepared anything.
Neither did I, so we're right.
No, you can just
Drag it,
the blue.
You can take the...
Oh.
yeah.
There you are. There's the little
Yeah. I had criticisms because the windows of my car were not clean enough. Really? I don't know if it's really important, but I had some concern with the actress playing the former radio host, and about her acting, and is she the right girl, the right actress, and but I wanted her to look like, she has a burden on herself, because maybe she also had a tough radio program before, and it could be 1 a.m. in the morning, so she's tired, and they don't exchange a lot, and she's mentioning the rum, the alcohol, and so I think it's a subtle way to, as I mentioned before, to de-glamorize the radio atmosphere, just to say they are, okay, it's great to have your own radio program, but it's also a work, and it's also a routine that you have to do, and I think I like it. Then you can play again. I like it to have filmed it in one way, and she's going on the right, and we just discovered the technicians and his girlfriend, and there is no shaking hands. It's very raw. You have to be raw when you're making a 16 minutes film, otherwise you can put the viewers in the wrong directions. Some viewers in France told me that her smile to the technicians could mean that they have an affair. We French are obsessed with it. But no, it's not the case. Okay.
La nuit sans phare et sans alibi. Au cœur de la nuit, avec Sybille Garnier sur Kaleidoscope FM.
When she's rehearsing her voice, making exercises about her, it's like a boxer. Yeah, you are strengthening your voice like you are coming on the stage. Yeah, and I like to we start to post the image of the woman, then it's followed by the ring. But I don't want to be too long about it. I also have concern with the male's voice, because the shadow. With this shadow we can guess that this woman is full of contradictions too. The light is not totally on her, so she has not a dark side, but
And was that something that you thought of, or the cinematographer?
yes, I thought of it. I am mentioning a lot of rock music, but I like rock music because in some videos you have really interesting things, and there is a song by Bruce Springsteen called Brilliant Disguise. It's a 3-minute one-shot coming on the face of Bruce Springsteen, tracking down on Bruce Springsteen, and in the end half of his face is in the shadow and the other half is in light, and he's talking about lying to his woman. So it makes sense. Okay, can you pause? When you make a short film on a subject related to death, which is the first time for me, the object, the set, is more important than you could imagine. I mentioned the lamp that is turning light, like the moon, but this Rubik's Cube Is that called?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I wanted, when the conversation with Michael starts, Sibyl is working with this object, who is probably the most cerebral object, toys of all times. It's really yes or no, it works. And in the end, so there is a kind of, not boredom, but she's waiting for, it's her everyday's job, so it's a way to pass time, okay? And in the end, when she's taking the rain stick and to her hair, it's like a funeral ritual. Because a rain stick is from Australia, I guess, and it's the opposite of the Rubik's Cube. It's probably the most spiritual object that you could imagine, because it's that long, and you, by just turning it, you are entering a world of rain sensations. So I had a lot to think of it, because it's a detail. I think the film would be understandable without, but by adding that, you have the first and the beginning and the end of her own process. And when she lights the candle, it's like she's saying hello, she's saying goodbye to the woman who died. So we took 2 hours to dispose those elements. All I didn't purchase them, they were in my flat or in my basement, but I had to really think what would be good for the set and what would be too much.
The directors, when you're planning film and then you're finally in the edit phase, at what point do you determine how long the film wants to be for yourself? And does it change in the process? I mean, do you come in saying, it's going to be a 20-minute film, or it's going to be a 45-minute film? And then when you're in the process, you're in the edit room, does that morph, or are you driven by some motivation for how long it should be?
When you're making a script, when you're writing a script, it's like delivering a baby. When you go on a shooting, it's like giving your newborn baby to 20 persons and praying for that the baby will be in good shape at the end. And in the editing room, you are taking the baby again in your arms, meaning the film. So you are alone for the first time since the writing of the script with your material. So then it's a question of honesty. There is a film about Queen, Bohemian Rhapsody, and in the film there is a moment when the producer says to Queen, with that song over 6 minutes, you will never get on radio, Bohemian Rhapsody, and it has become their biggest hit, and it's 6 minutes long, and it's still on radios. So for the Radio Moon, when I wrote it, I thought it should last around 15 minutes. You have the crew is always asking that to you. How long? So how many days of shooting do we need? But to be honest, I don't have any problem being my own producer if you have a film which is 24 minutes long and you realize that most of the film festivals don't take films that are over 20 minutes. I don't have any problems, maybe I'm wrong, but to cut 4 minutes in the film and giving the film a new life. So if you look at Stanley Kubrick's interviews for films like 2001, Space Odyssey, the film could have lasted 5 hours.
Right.
So, in front of the editing, I don't know if it's the same case for you, but we are like children. We are trying to find best. We are not certain of anything. We just know that some sequences are working, and there is nothing to remove or to add, but there are some sequences that could be in balance, I think. So.
First of all, what attracts you about this length of film, 15 to 20 minutes? That length of telling a story in that amount of time, and how do you write for the screen?
What rate for means?
Right?
Right.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. Do you write all your films? Do you write the script for all your films?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's beginning to end is your project.
It was a combination of few ideas I had for past years, because as I mentioned, when you're making documentaries, your camera is rolling a lot.
Too much.
And I didn't say too much.
That can be.
But I remember a quote by Billy Wilder, the director, and before he died, he said, "When I think that my camera has only rolled for 2 weeks," meaning
In his career.
in his career.
Yeah.
So in this film, I wanted to deal about, of course, death, radio, and separation, and so what was right for the film, really I don't know.
But you're attracted to that
I
size
like
of
it.
a story.
I am working on a 15-minute fiction films that you will see next year at the Big Water. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, between 15 minutes and 20, I think it's like a little opera in music. You can introduce some characters. But in the film, there was one subject that I wanted to tackle. But nobody is talking about it it's about work. Because Michael is in this position of despair because he's owning his own travel agency. He feels responsible for the death of this woman. And today, at the time of big corporation like Amazon, everything, it's hard for someone to feel really in charge of something in his job. I mean, you have many problems with guns in America, so sometimes I think of the guy who has sold the gun to the killer. But now you can buy maybe so many stuff on the internet. That internet is no man's land. There is no responsibility. You will never send a message to Amazon or IKEA to say, "Oh, my furniture you sold me has broke down, and the chair I bought has so I have an injury." Michael is alone because he sold the tickets for real, and so it was an aspect of the film that could not be. It was really important. So maybe it had 2 minutes in the film.
Go ahead.
I have a question actually for both of you about the emotional impact of your films. I'm very aware of, for instance, Dawn and yours, The Man from Cambodia. I could feel that there was a lot of anger with him, and there was a part of me that wanted him to be in a different place, you know? And then I realized, wait a minute, forgiveness is a process. It can take, as I said in the film, years and years. It was really helpful to me, actually, to see that everybody was at a different place, even though I was kind of internally rebelling with that.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything else? Actually, before I forget, I want to say to you, Pierre, when you were talking today about the Rubik's Cube, that really impacted me. It was interesting to hear you say how important it was for you to pick out these things, because I was like, damn it, why is she spending her time with that cube, you know? You know, she has this important role she's supposed to be playing with this person through her microphone, but it also made sense when you talked about how, you know, she needed to kind of get into the job or get into the different, from one transition to a next. So I guess I'm just struck by how these so-called little things can so much go inside of me as a viewer. It's wonderful.
Thank you.
It was interesting because I thought the Rubik's Cube thing, I've watched behavioral therapists work with kids and they often have them with fidget spinners or something, and it's about helping them focus on something with their mind. So when I saw the Rubik's Cube, I was like, of course she's doing that. She's trying to focus on this guy and she needs to get this energy out of her body somehow. So I had a completely different response to that. And then with the water, I was like, she's purifying the space. She's just been through some crazy stuff, and that seemed like a spiritual moment of like, and now we're clearing the space. So it's interesting how these things read to different people. It makes film fun, right? You know?
For me, the Rubik's Cube was the brain, and the brain stick was the soul. So when you're a radio host at night, you have to have both. If you are too emotional with your listeners, you can forget what you have to say to them in order for them to get better. And if you are too rigid, then you can be full of sarcasm. I don't like sarcasm in films, I think, and in life. And I wanted a film to be kind, but not too much. So those two objects were the opposite.
Oh, I was going to say the Rubik's Cube, as she's turning it and got more aggressive with it, I thought, she's going to solve this and it's going to solve that.
Oh, yeah.
Not true at all.
That's it.
But when she picked up the rain stick, I gave my daughter a rain stick when she was a little girl, and it just brought back. But as she turned it and the little pieces inside fell down, it felt like she was releasing what was the angst that it gave to her, that it was cascading away from her. It was very symbolic.
Yeah, she cannot cry.
Right.
Because of the technicians in front of her, the radios. She cannot cry. She's not allowed to cry. So the rain stick, it's like tears. I wanted to show how the moon is affecting us. Everybody knows that. But again, when you wrote a 15-minute film, you have to write notes from time to time, and at one moment it's crystallizing. You have crystallizing. Okay, it makes sense at one moment. I wanted to talk about the moon, I wanted to talk about the radio, but I didn't know, and suddenly there is that connection. For the dog, maybe it's not plain, but I wanted to show that the dog itself could be affected by the moonlight, and that he has missed, he hasn't seen the car, so he has been run over by the car almost, and he was like Sybil, like Michael, he's affected by the moon. His senses are different. But it's strange because this dog was not supposed to be on the set. It has made 1,000 kilometers to come to the set, and we have him for 1 hour, and it's not a professional dog, but he was really, I'm glad we could make it. But okay, sorry, but I forgot your metaphor. Your metaphor.
It turned out like
Almost dead and came back to life.
Sorry?
Almost dead and came back to life.
Could have been dead.
Yeah.
And it wasn't.
Yeah. Thank you. I will use that.
You didn't get a chance to ask anything.
Oh, my question is strangely about subtitles. Because they're translations, they're not literal word for word, so there's nuance in there. And do you guys struggle with that? Do you check them? Do you worry about the tone being different from the actual film because of individual words that could have been, you know, you might have a choice of 4 words, and that sometimes matters.
It's word on word. I mean, Radio Moon, we could translate everything from English to French, and I may be deceptive saying that, but the technology is so cheaper than before that 10 years ago, when you had to make the subtitles, you had to take the real decision because it was written forever on your copy. Now you can try. I have got a friend in Tennessee. I send them the text, and she helped me sometimes to get rid of a word so that you can read the subtitles better. So you have more time, so it's more comfortable. So I think you have read everything that is said in the screen.